Well, good morning, everybody. I'm making another recipe today. I just have to do this every time, I guess. I had a friend point out that I do one of two things. I guess habits are hard to break. But anyway, we are cooking again today. Now, we are making RUNZAs. RUNZAs. You don't have to roll your R's. I don't think it's a Russian recipe. But if you've heard of this restaurant, this is actually a restaurant. I was familiar with it down in the Nebraska area when we used to drive to go see my aunt and uncle when I was a kid, and they're down in Nebraska. And we would come by these restaurants, and it's a chain. It's like a local chain. I'm not sure how many states they're in, but it's like a loose meat sandwich, okay? So my aunt, of course, we're loving these sandwiches, and my aunt has a recipe, lo and behold. So it has kind of been a tradition in my family to make these. And then when I got married, of course, I make them for my extended family now. And my father-in-law happens to be a big fan of these because they are portable. If you know Mark, you know that he is constantly on the go. So that is why he really enjoys these. They're easy to reheat, and he can just take them with them. And they're all enclosed in a nice dough, so they're not messy. Okay, so let's get started. So it's kind of a process. There are many steps involved here. It's not hard. You just have to kind of plan your day. So you've got the time to do this from start to finish, okay? So here's my dough recipe, and there's my filling recipe. So that's where we start. We're gonna start by making the dough. So we've got 2 cups of warm water. Now, when I mean warm, I do not mean boiling, because we are going to dissolve yeast in here. And if it's too hot, you will kill your yeast, and then you end up with a dough that is no fun to work with at all. All right, and then 2 packages of yeast. Now I buy mine in bulk because we happen to need it in bulk. So 2 1/4 teaspoons is 1 package. So we're gonna do 4 1/2 teaspoons, 2, 3, 4 1/2. All right, there's our 4 1/2. Now, this just needs to dissolve up a bit. And I do this right in my mixing bowl of my KitchenAid, of course, my kitchen best friend here. So we just kind of mix it up till it gets a milky color, and then we will continue on. Now, to feed that yeast, now you're wondering if I'm making wine or making food, right? To feed the yeast, we need sugar. So we are going to add a 1/2 cup of sugar, and that is what is gonna get our dough. I wouldn't say it's a sweet dough, but it's definitely not a sourdough bread, okay? And then 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt, and I just use plain old table salt for this, so nothing fancy here. There's no need for fancy here. All right, 1 1/2 teaspoon salt, 1 egg. Oh, here was my butter, the other part of my butter. 1 egg. Okay, so basically, you just want to break up the yolk on that egg. All right, so then the next thing, we're adding margarine or butter. I don't believe in margarine, we use butter. So 1/2 stick, that was my other 1/2. We have just melted it in the microwave under the melt function. So there's my butter. All right, so obviously we just have a slew of liquid here at this point, so now we need to add the flour. So it calls for 6 1/2 cups flour. I don't do the full 6 1/2 cups flour because I like to have plenty of leeway when I am rolling this out to use flour liberally and not have to worry about getting a tough dough, okay? So I am just going to add 6 cups of flour, and we're just gonna incorporate as we go here, and then eventually mix it in, actually with the electric mixer paddle, but I'm just gonna use it manually for now. So that was 2. And if you know me, you know I'm not the bread maker in our family. That skips a generation, apparently. My mom is a wonderful bread maker of any type, And actually Scott is too, but I just will enjoy it and enjoy the fruits of their labor, because I am not. This is actually one I can make that is foolproof, which probably is why I do that. Ah, gosh. So yeah, once we get this dough incorporated, all we do is cover it with cellophane and throw it in the fridge and let it do its magic. And I'm not kidding, it's the craziest thing. and it will rise on its own to the extent that we need it to. Okay, that was 4, and I'll show you what this is looking like, okay? So after 4 cups, that's what it's looking like. So it's still pretty loosey-goosey, which is good because it makes it a whole lot easier. You don't have to knead this or anything when we get done, which is the beauty of this. So that's 5. And 1 more. And I am really curious if y'all have heard of the RUNZA restaurant and what they are. I know when I talk about these to other people, very few people know what in the world I'm talking about. But if you've ever tried the restaurant, it really is good. Okay, so now it is actually coming together as a dough. So we are going to put this on and give it a little whir here. You see the cloud of flour? Black probably wasn't my best choice to wear today. Okay, that's it. Get a spatula here. Yeah, see, it's a very wet dough, and it makes it really easy now. Yeah, we don't have to do anything to this. That's the beauty of it. So yeah, clean off your paddle. You probably wouldn't even need a KitchenAid to do this. Well, I know you wouldn't, but I like to use mine when I can. Okay, so there's our dough. All right, so now we're just gonna cover it with some plastic wrap. I have the industrial size box here. I think I just like it because it actually has a nice blade on it. All right, so this goes in the fridge for 4 hours, at least 4 hours. You can keep it in there longer, just be sure you keep it nice and tight so it doesn't get dried out. And as our hours progress, this dough will get nice and high. At least it better, otherwise I did something wrong. But pretty simple dough, okay? So that is our first step. All right, we're on to step 2. All right, we're making RUNZAs today again. So now we're making the filling. Hamburger mixture, pretty simple. So I have got 1.5 pounds, well, probably closer to 1.5 pounds. Calls for 1.25 pounds. You can be wherever you want on that number. Honestly, how meaty you want them, okay? So I am browning that along with 1/2 to 1 cup chopped onion. Mine is a cup. I know it's at least a cup, okay? So we are just browning that. Now, because I use really lean ground beef, I'm not gonna have to drain this. If you do use ground beef that is fattier and there is grease in here, like pooling, you're gonna need to drain that off when you get done, okay? So that is what is going on in here, and I'm just doing that in a big Dutch oven. So this is a Le Creuset, it's a cast iron, and I really love these pieces. They're an investment, but I guarantee you will love them. They will be your go-to pots. Okay, so once we get that browned, which I have that brown now we are adding my recipe again. You probably know this by now. My recipe says one thing, but I'll tell you what I do. So my recipe says 10 cups of cabbage. It actually used to be less than that, and I've constantly crossed it off and added more and more just because we like it. We like more filling in them, okay? So we're gonna actually, I use the whole bag of this, and it's 2 pounds. It's coleslaw mix instead of cabbage, but if you just want to go ahead and chop up straight cabbage, that would be true to the recipe. I am using a whole bag of coleslaw mix. It's easy and it's a wonderful thing. So we're just gonna put that in. The whole bag, yes, I meant the whole bag. And yes, it looks super full right now, but this cooks down to like less than half. So it's pretty crazy. Okay, so now we need to add some seasonings. This needs some jazz, right? The only seasoning really in this is pepper. It's a peppery mixture, okay? So we are gonna add water because we don't want that hamburger to burn at the bottom. So a 1/2 cup water, and that just is gonna help cook down that cabbage as well. 1.5 teaspoons salt. And if you are wanting more salt, go for it. It's like seasoning your meat, okay? So if, depending on how you would normally season your hamburger is probably where you want to be. So that's what I'm doing there. And then pepper. And again, use a good quality pepper. Now for this one, I do use a fine ground, and then I use some coarse ground as well. So it calls for, again, it called for like 1.5 teaspoons. I use closer to 3. So I'm gonna put in 2 of the finely ground pepper from Penzeys. It's the good stuff. And then I'm gonna just use some fresh cracked pepper in here as well. And that does really give it a nice flavor. I know you're probably thinking this sounds bland, but it's really good. So we're gonna add this. In fact, I have to tell you, here's the rest of my story on why I continue to make these. You know how some foods you make for a while, it's like on your menu plans constantly, right? It's kind of your go-to. These are now my go-to because for Christmas every year, and I've been doing this now for years, when Mark decided he loved these things, I just give him a certificate every year, and it's a refillable certificate. And me being a pharmacist, PRN means as needed. So he gets his RUNZAs PRN as needed. He can just shoot me a text, give me a phone call and say, he just says, hey, I'm down to 1, I'm down to 2. Yeah, and I just make him some more. He throws them in the freezer and they're good to go. Okay, so there's our seasoning. Now the last thing, Tabasco. And yes, it does come in a bottle this large, who knew? And yeah, I do love Tabasco. My brother is a big Tabasco freak too. I'm pretty sure it's in his top food pyramid of probably the 3 things that he eats the most, and I'm not kidding. So again, this calls for a dash. My dash is, I have about 2 teaspoons. So that's what we like. And yeah, again, this is to taste. So you'll just have to figure out what you would normally have for that much meat and how you are going to season it. So I'm just gonna give it a quick stir here. We're gonna turn it down to simmer. We just want it to simmer down and cook now. And we're gonna simmer this for 15 to 20 minutes. And then we will come back, and when we're ready to roll, literally roll. Roll the dough and make this stuff. All right, we'll touch base in a little while. All right, peeps, we are ready. We have done step 1, making our dough, and it has been in the fridge now for about 5 hours. Only needs to be about 4, but it's been in there for about 5. We also have our filling made, which we are cooling. You know, we simmered it until the cabbage was, yeah, like I said, it was gonna go down to about half, and that's what it did. So now what we wanna do is add a couple cups of cheese to this. And again, it calls for, I think it only calls for 8 ounces, but I do add 2 cups, so that'd be closer to 2. So we're gonna mix that in, and it's nice and cool now because it has been just sitting on top of the stove after I turned it off, okay? Because you don't wanna be dealing with hot filling on dough. You'd melt the dough. That would be a mess. That's why you make them kind of like one right after the other, and then you just wait, okay? So that's why I said when you need to kind of plan your day to finish this whole thing in its entirety, I was not kidding. Okay, so there is our filling all mixed up. Beautiful, right? Okay, now let's check out our dough. Remember I said that it needs to be rising now, and it's foolproof. Hopefully, either that or you can call me a fool going forward. Okay, let's check it out. All right, I was right. Look at that. We kept the cellophane nice and tight on there, and it rose. It filled the whole bowl, so that is perfect. All right, so now if you are a dough person, if you have dealt with dough, we are going to roll this out, but I do it kind of goofy, so bear with me. All right, so this board, I had just laundered the top of this not long ago after lefse season because it gets to be such a mess after a day of rolling that. So it is laundered, meaning I need to rub some flour back into it. Otherwise, I'm gonna have a sticky mess. So that's what I'm doing there, which is another good reason why I said, even though that recipe called for 6.5 cups of flour, I only do 6 because I want to be sure to have a lot of wiggle room there when it comes to additional flour. Okay, so let's get all this dough out. And remember how it was kind of wet when we put it in there? It still is. It's not a really stiff dough. So it has a lot of moisture in here, which is why I want to be able to use flour very liberally. All right, so there's my dough. Now, what this recipe makes is 16. So this is the easiest way that I do this. I just kind of roll it into a log about the width of my board. okay? And this is just one of those heritage grill boards, but of course you can roll this out on anything. You certainly don't need that piece of equipment. Okay, so I want it to be about even here. And then I cut it into 16 pieces. So it makes it really simple. So I'll just cut it into 4, cut it into each little section into 4, and just carry on till I get 16. Okay, so I'll finish off one here. And this is a bread knife. This is a serrated knife. Okay, so pretend that I have them all done now, okay? So then I would just move them all to the side, all 16. And then I've got my individual one. This is gonna be one RUNZA, okay? So again, be sure that it's coated in flour. I have got this tool. So this is a Pampered Chef tool. I can't even tell you what it's called. There's nothing on it, but it's got 2 ends of just a rolling pin, and it's like a hand size one, which I really like, and I'm way more apt to use this for stuff than I am a big one. So what we are aiming for is to get this, and I do have a note on my recipe even, don't get the dough super thin on the inside of your square-ish form here, because if you do that and it splits during baking, it's kind of a mess. So I end up coming up with a bunch like this, and I'll do them all at one time, okay? Now for video purposes, I'm not going to do them all at one time. I'm gonna show you how to do one. Okay, and like I said, I make more filling than that recipe would have originally called for, okay? So you just plop that in the middle, pull your 2 square ends and 2 square ends. Kind of like a little package. See what I'm doing here? Okay, now you can seal them with water if you have trouble with them sticking, and they just look like this, little pockets of dough with that meat filling, okay? So seam side will go down on a greased cookie sheet, okay? So my cookie sheets, I'll just spray them. I can get 8 on one, and then we're gonna bake them off. So we bake them at 350 degrees, and they bake for, seam side down for about 20 minutes, okay? So I'm gonna continue on and get them baked and then come back and give you a peek at what they look like when they're done, okay? So do you see what I'm talking about when I do them all at one time? That way the filling is even in all of them, so they bake evenly. So I am a big believer in that. You don't want to learn the hard way that you have not enough filling or way too much. And that has happened. If they are too full and you have additional filling, that is not the end of the world. It's delicious. I mean, it's really like a casserole. So mix something else in it, or just have some crusty bread for supper with some filling in. It's the same difference, okay? So I'm gonna continue to get these rolled up now. Well, not rolled, but make my little packets and get them on my cookie sheets and get these things in the oven so I can show you what they look like when they come out, okay? They're done. Alexa, turn off timer. All right, success. Aren't they nice? Okay, so you can get these as brown as you want to. I'd say if we were gonna eat them right now, I would probably let them get even a little bit browner, but since I'm packaging them basically for the freezer and then to be reheated in a microwave, this is fine, okay? So we're gonna just take them off of here, and of course, because we grease the sheet, they come off super easy. We'll just put them on a rack to cool, and then Ziploc bags, just plain old sandwich bags like the cheap ones. And yeah, they fit in here like perfectly, and we're gonna let them cool completely before we get them in the Ziplocs, and then I just freeze them individually. And that's it, that's a wrap. And I hope you give these a try. You're probably like, yeah, that was a lot of work. You know what? They're not a lot of work. It's just a time commitment, and nothing really even takes that long. It's more, you just need to plan for your day. Okay, so RUNZAs. They're loose meat sandwiches basically inside of a lovely dough that just gets nice and crisp and delicious. It's very tender dough. They're great with ketchup. I love to dip my food. If you know me, you already know that, but you can make them as spicy as you want. Feel free to switch up anything. I'd love to hear how you make yours different, or how you make yours to taste. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it gives you a little inspiration to get in your kitchen and try something that is delicious. I hope you have something fun on your agenda plan today. I hope you have something wonderful on your menu plan today.